go, Kevin? Okay. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our regularly scheduled meeting of the El Dorado Irrigation District for June 26th. It's 9 a.m. And we will get this meeting going. Roll call will reflect that all board members are present and accounted for. Kevin's helping us with IT today. Mr. Osborne, Director Osborne, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? A moment of silence. All right, thank you very much. Next up is we need to adopt the agenda. Have any interest in doing that?
So moved.
No move. Got a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Any public input in the audience? Seeing none. Kevin, do we have anybody online? Nobody online. All right. Motion second. Please vote on the adoption of the agenda. Got no lights.
By voting.
President Veerkamp, you may elect, if you
Oh,
can't
that's
do
right.
the electronic system, to just have a voice call today.
All right. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And we're off to a great start. Communications, General Manager, Employee Recognition, and Jim?
None today.
All right. And now we're at public comment. Do we have any public comment from anybody in the audience? Good morning.
Good morning, Paul Raveling here. I'd like to make a brief public comment in recognizing the role of engineering in this organization particularly and in other organizations. And the way I would like to do that is to very briefly note my contact and by meeting up with another well-known engineer in 2004. That was Neil Armstrong. And when I did what I called an X-15 history tour of the United States, that included stopping in Ohio. But Neil was the quintessential engineer. And with respect to my special interest in the X-15 flight research program, he was a principal engineer for NASA on the MH-96 box used in the number 3 X-15. And that box enabled the first re-entries from extremely high flight for an X-15 into space. Its top altitude, if I recall, was 372,200 feet, but it's about 67 miles above Earth. And it also explains his famous flight that introduced the first man movie. That was one on April 20th, 1962, where he was testing a feature of the MH-96 box, which was G-limiting. And he had a test point to observe G-limiting at 4 Gs, and he got there at the end of re-entry, pulled to try to feel the 4 Gs, didn't feel it, pulled it a little bit more, and as a result, he went sailing by Edwards at Mach 3 and 60,000 feet of altitude. And actually got it turned around to head back toward the dry lake with the southernmost point of his turnaround over the Los Angeles Basin in the Pasadena-Altadena area. And when he got to the dry lake, he didn't have a lot of clearance from the edge of the dry lake when he touched down. And the most interesting way to describe that was in the after-flight notes that checked with one of the two F-104 chase pilots who joined up with Neil on that approach. And they asked him, how much clearance did Neil have from the edge of from the Joshua trees at the edge of the lake bed when he landed? And the answer was let's see, hope I remember this. It's been ages since I cited it. The answer was, yeah, okay, about 100 feet on either side. So that was possibly the most famous X-15 landing. Uh, But in any case, engineering is extremely important in a water district, and this one and EID has had a habit of doing it very well. And I'm here because the district where I live now in Gold River is has problems and is not doing something in particular very well. And after the meeting, I would like to talk with Jim about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Good to see you. All right, we'll move on to communications. General Manager, Jim?
Nothing to add this morning.
All right, Clerk of the Board, we have none. Board of Directors? Yes, sir. Director Dwyer.
Thank you. I had the opportunity to speak to the Taxpayers Association last Monday by invitation about EID and water rights and water ability and availability and rates. And I continued on the path of stating the case for our need to upgrade and maintain our infrastructure and the possible effect that would have on the rates. It was surprisingly, it was fairly well received. And I built on things that Jesse and Jim had put in the waterfront, kind of starting to say, here's why we need to take care of our infrastructure. So it went pretty well. Thanks.
Very good.
President Veerkamp, I'm sorry, after the board discussion, I do have a general manager's report after all. Something occurred over the weekend I'd like to brief the board on.
All right, very good.
I
Director Osborne.
just spent a week at Eagle Lake in north of Susanville at the old retired firefighters camp out. There were 78 of us there, and so we still made it. But I wanted to tell you, last year when I went by Honey Lake, it was virtually nothing. This year it is brimming, and even snow on the mountain still all the way up there. So we've got a lot of snow melt. And I've just got a text from our superintendent or our manager of our recreation department, because I asked him to let me know when I could get my boat in Caples Lake, and I just got it 2 days ago that we finally had enough snow melt that I could launch my boat. And it was 1.5 feet about 3 weeks ago in the parking lot. Anyway, I'm ready to roll.
Very good. Fish on soon. All right, I just wanted to let everybody know we have a LAFCO Strategic Committee Planning meeting this afternoon, and then regular meeting on Wednesday night if anybody's bored and wants to come to LAFCO on Wednesday evening at 5:30 at the county office Board of Supervisors meeting room. Anybody else? Jim, then?
Well, actually, there are two things. Patrick, come on up. We had an incident down in El Dorado Hills, but President Veerkamp, you also didn't report on the wheelbarrow championship.
Was I supposed to do that?
Well, only if you want to take some ownership on that.
Well, yeah, okay, so the senior race I won, and then the championship race I got 5th, and there was 20 participants in that, so. Wheelbarrow was good, yeah.
How old were the other competitors?
There were 6 in the senior race, and anywhere from 55 and up. Most of them were younger than I am, believe it or not. And in the championship race, the 18-year-old to 22-year-old dominated. Yeah, there's a family of, right now, 6 boys, and they're all in the championship race, and I understand there's 3 more in that family that'll be coming up. So, yeah, that one might be time to, yeah, next year will be the 80th annual running of the John M. Studebaker wheelbarrow races. So it'll be hopefully something that'll be a little special.
I'm glad I brought that up. We had an incident down in El Dorado Hills. Patrick's going to share the situation with you and talk about assets that may need to be replaced over time. This is, I think, the 2nd or 3rd, 4th in 5 years?
It's the second within the last 5.
Okay, go ahead, Patrick.
Good morning, Patrick.
Good morning, Board.
Oh, yes.
Water Operations Manager. So on Monday last week, we received a call from a former employee of a wet spot out on Dorado Hills Boulevard, which he identified to be the 18 instruments experienced in the district. We monitored the leak and determined that it wasn't a catastrophic, immediate catastrophic failure. We fell back and figured out our shutdown procedure for the area. Initially, we had over 150 customers that were going to be affected by this outage. With some work with our chief operator in distribution, Matt Keeler, as well as Bill Pedersen, drinking water supervisor, they were able to get it down to approximately 10 customers being out of water, although one of them was El Dorado Hills Community Services District, the Aquatic Center. So upon further communication with El Dorado Hills CSD, they had a substantial event going on this week as well as next weekend. We had planned initially to prepare and repair the leak on Tuesday. However, Sunday was the time that they were able to somewhat work with us and kind of a back and forth method to find an amenable time for us to get out and make that repair to be shut down for a minimum of 8 hours. So on Sunday, we went out, began to pothole existing utilities that are out there. On the right-hand side, you can see it in that trench. So our 18-inch transmission main, which was constructed in 1960, is in the middle there in the foreground. Behind them on the right is actually some of the joint utilities that we have in that area. As we were potholing those utilities, the photo on the left shows you on the top was the initial leak that we saw, and then that's when I drove up on the site around 10 a.m. The pipeline completely let go while we were potholing those existing utilities. Next slide. With that leak, as you can see, the initial leak was more of that circular location on the left-hand side, and then obviously we had the seam split, which caused the full rupture. Upon further investigation, again, this was an internal mortar line failure. It's somewhat difficult to see, but the mortar obviously has broken out on the top. Don't mind the bottom portion of that photo. That's a window that we cut out to actually completely dewater the pipe. But on the top there, you can see the mortar completely cascaded and shattered. But you can still see a rounding effect on that initial location. That's indicative of an internal corrosion failure of mortar loss, allowing that water to sit on that steel cylinder. As Jim was mentioning, this is the second leak. We had one in 2019, which was far more catastrophic, that occurred near Wilson Boulevard in the fire department. We were very fortunate in this location yet again. Even though we have a number of failed isolation valves on the transmission line, we were able to reoperate our system to minimize the customer impacts yet again. And we're also fortunate as well that this didn't occur next week during what's seeming to be a very high demand period as we're headed into. The timing worked out for us to be able to make this repair. And subsequently, next slide, please. On Friday, we are in the process of going through the El Dorado Main 2 transmission assessment work, and that involves placing a camera inside the pipeline to check for leaks as well as to get a visual inspection of the mortar. One of the isolation valves for the blow-off has failed, requiring us to do an emergency repair tomorrow to replace that isolation valve on El Dorado Main number 2, just further reinforcing the need for our aging infrastructure replacement. That's all I had this morning.
Questions? Yes.
Yep, Patrick,
Dwyer.
on that photograph for EDM number 2, I think, was that where, no, next slide, next one. Okay. Had we done vegetation management in that particular area?
We
Earlier.
did just in advance of this leak occurring, so we were out there when the leak occurred. We actually came in with our vegetation equipment.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other? Jim?
Yeah, I received an email or text from Dan showing the water spouting out there, and I was coming back up the hill from Folsom, shorts and tennis shoes, not necessarily appropriate construction outfit, and I had to borrow a hard hat and a vest to see it. But I just wanted to share with you how professional it was set up. The signage was perfect. The flag people were perfect. Just a great operation. I'm really proud of our guys out in the field. It was a great setup. So Patrick, please pass that on to the guys.
Will do. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you very much. Good work. Catching it early is better than later. That's for darn sure. All right, We will move on to our consent calendar. We need a motion for approval.
So moved.
All right, thank you, Director Anzini. Got a second by Director Dwyer. Anybody in the public wishing to comment on it? Seeing none, nobody online. Kevin, thank you very much. All those in favor of approving our consent calendar, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? All right, consent is approved. We will move on to information items. Item 4, finance. Good morning.
Good morning, President Veerkamp, Board Directors. I'm Jamie Bandy, Director of Finance. I'm here this morning just for a brief financial update for our first quarter ending March 31st. Next slide, please. Okay, so taking a look at our revenues, kind of comparing them for the first quarter of 2023 compared to the first quarter of 2022. Total revenue was up about $6.5 million year over year for this quarter. There were minimal changes throughout the categories, with the exception of our water and wastewater sales, which were primarily due to a wetter winter this year, which Jordan will give a presentation on that a little bit later this morning. Property tax and our FCC revenue, those are much higher this quarter than they were compared to last year, and that was simply just a timing of when we received them and when they were recorded. I also just wanted to point out on our revenue for the water and the wastewater that we also have just a slight timing issue on our billing. So for the first quarter, we would have billed out much higher than what we've received back in, but those revenues were subsequently received after March 31st. Yes, sir.
I know we've talked about this before your time with Mark, and I brought up the fact that we should seasonalize our forecast so that the first quarter, it's not a straight line 12-month average. It should be less in the first and second quarter, increasing in the third, and then decreasing again in the fourth. Has that been done, or is it still straight line?
No, so the 3-month adopted budget that you see here for both years, those figures are seasonally adjusted.
Great, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Next slide. Okay, taking a look at our expenses, again, just comparing year over year for the first quarter, they remain pretty consistent. So about 11.7, 11.8 for both. Some variances between the individual categories, but overall pretty constant. Next slide, please. And this slide just is looking again at that 3-month seasonally adjusted budget compared to what we've brought in so far. And roughly the first quarter, we're at about 18 to 20% of the overall budget. So we're on track for the first quarter. Next slide. The next couple of slides that I did include in the presentation are just our 2023 to 2027 financial forecast as presented in the budget last December. We haven't made any changes to that as of this presentation, but we are working on having that updated, and I'll present that at a future meeting alongside with our cost of service study and information that we're bringing forward with that. Like I said, the next couple of slides are just those financial forecasts that were presented in the budget. They are also included in your board packet for reference. Keep going. And all the way to the end. So no action is required today. It's an information item only. Are there any questions?
Questions or comments? You're thinking?
Yeah, I've got one, Mr. Chairman. Can you go back to the previous slide?
That's the wastewater only.
No, the one
You
that
want the
showed.
total?
Yeah, there you go.
One more.
It's reflecting a $50 million bond issuance next year. And we've been pretty judicious about managing our ratios to make sure that we get adequate bond or preferential bond rates. So that just drives home the importance of the cost of service study and what we do in that decision to make sure that we have the ability to get the cheapest rate on that money. Thanks.
Thank you.
And just to highlight one thing, if you look at that line that says cash balance December 31st, it's about, 10 lines up from the bottom. You can see our cash position drops significantly over that period of time, and that's why when we brief the board over time, we need to take that into account on our cost of service analysis as well. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
All right, very good. Jamie, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yep. We'll move on to item 5. Oh, any public comment? Excuse me, just making sure nothing online, nobody in the room, we're okay. Now we'll move on to number 5, engineering. Mr. Money.
Good morning, John Money, Senior Civil Engineer for the district, and here this morning to present an update on district alternative energy infrastructure, including our in-conduit hydro, solar, and battery storage facilities throughout the district. So we've been in front of the board numerous times, going back to 2004, for various alternative energy projects the district has completed. Those facilities include a 0.5 megawatt hydro facility completed at Reservoir 7 in 2018, a 1 megawatt district-owned solar facility at the El Dorado Hills wastewater treatment plant in 2004, followed by a 1.6 megawatt power purchase agreement approved for the El Dorado Hills wastewater treatment plant, as well as 2.35 megawatts of PPA power approved at our Deer Creek wastewater treatment plant facility. Lastly, we've had just over 11 megawatt hours of battery energy storage is installed at 8 of our facilities throughout the district, and that includes water, wastewater, and a general facility here at the headquarters building. Again, just some background on why are we doing that. Board policy 8020 states that the district shall seek to augment its electric energy and capacity revenue stream and or reduce its operational electrical energy expenses by adding new generation facilities whenever they are economically viable. And the reason we do that, of course, is PG&E continues to be one of the largest expenses for the district. That shows our total PG&E expenses in 2021 of $5.4 million and $5.6 million as of last year. It is important to note that that $5.6 million of last year includes about $1.5 million of savings, so we'd be exceeding probably $7 million in PG&E costs without any mitigation to date. So again, we'll go through our 3 kind of project categories. Hydro, starting with hydro, our inline in-conduit hydro project is at our Res 7 facility. It includes 2 kernel turbines installed, which basically feed off of, if you look at the schematic on the right, high pressure delivered from the Pleasant Oak, Maine to our Res 7 facility. So historically, that was all that high pressure was just burned off through a pressure reducing station. Now any of those excesses flows pass through those turbines, generate electricity, and are used to offset cost for our Folsom Lake intake. So in 2022, the cost savings, after we've crunched those numbers, we anticipate we saved about $112,000 from that facility.
Does that include the amortization of the cost of installing those?
It does not. So we are, this is a little bit of a challenging facility, sunk cost, and we are now recouping some of those costs.
John, I was going through this, and maybe I missed it, but I was looking for the ROI analysis, return on investment analysis that we had done on all these different projects. And if it's in here, direct me to it. If it's not, could you get back to us to look at the projected ROIs for all these individual projects versus the real world, what were happening?
We could, yeah.
Yeah.
It's been, we've really struggled putting together this analysis, and that for a large part is getting proper billing and confirmed billing from PG&E has just really been a struggle for us. We get through this procedure, we're still fighting that issue with our battery installations, but we can try to tease that out. Again, just as a primer, the in-conduit hydro has really not quite performed to date. We can look into additional reasons, maybe optimizing that site a little bit more. And again, that's why we got to be mindful as we proceed through these. We really got to do our homework up front and make sure that
Yeah, and that's actually
as well.
jibes with my recollection of the various ROA projections of that the panels were looking really good.
right.
And but the inline in conduit hydro project was questionable at the time. So that's why I would like for us to, when you can get the
Full
data,
circle
come back.
and get a report.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
well,
You could put little rotary fans on the end, on those chutes and just let them create the electricity instead of in the pipe.
Oh, outside?
Yeah, outside. Yeah, that would be like an egg beater.
there would be some engineering challenges with that.
Well, isn't Modesto Irrigation District using that?
Laura, use your mic,
I'm
so,
sorry.
just in case the public's listening, yeah.
Isn't Modesto Irrigation District, they've pretty much done a lot of that in their flat, open flumes that they've got in the valley. I thought they did.
Putting turbines actually in the flumes?
Well, in the aqueducts.
I'm not familiar with that. I'd have to
Okay.
look. Again,
You know what? I apologize. It was Turlock Irrigation District. So,
Turlock.
yeah.
I am
okay.
not as familiar with this project. I would guess,
Right.
Again, we have significantly high pressures at this site, and that's why we had the pressure reducing station, and that's why we were able to use the turbines there.
Right. Okay.
I would guess that there'd be some concerns, some safety concerns, doing anything other than the setup we have at this facility. But yeah, we can look into that. Again, I think this site largely is underperforming. There are some additional concerns with the condition of the POM upstream of this. So our operations has been hesitant to really maximize this for fear of the pipe letting loose upstream of the facility.
Okay.
Yeah, next slide, please. So moving into solar, which has been definitely a success story for the district. Here's kind of an overview of our El Dorado Hills plant site. You'll see the kind of lighter gray in the middle of the eastern side of the site. That's the original 1 megawatt field that the district constructed or finished construction in 2006. We basically surrounded that with a PPA that is used to offset our UV facilities, that facility. I put these up again just to kind of show you some. One of the biggest drawbacks about solar is it takes up a lot of real estate, so it's just not applicable for every site. However, wherever we've had the opportunity, we've tried to roll it out. So, next slide, please. So, summary of the savings that we've had at the El Dorado Hills site. The existing, again, 1 megawatt facility was completed in 2006. That was a 50-50 cost match with the CPUC on that facility. We are currently seeing really good production still out of those panels for a kind of first generation facility. A lot of people are a little surprised on that. And we've also, however, we've also had to replace the inverters at that facility. The first one went in 2018, and then we replaced 3 additional ones in 2022.
John, are we, because I know the NEM 2.0 is a 20-year, you grandfathered in for 20 years, and then you go to whatever it is then at that time. Are the NEM 1, are we grandfathered in forever, or is there a time limit on that as well?
There's nuances upon nuances as we get through these contracts. So NEM 1 is the difference why we pursued the NEM 2 originally for the PPAs is it preserved grandfathering of time of use. So we get full benefit of the power we produce between 3 to 8, I believe, is the old time of use. And PG&E had since moved that back to 4 to 9 p.m.
Right.
So it's a smaller period, it's more in the shoulder, it's not in the peak solar production. And that's a significant change in the cost savings between the two projects. So the original solar facility is NEM 1. It is not grandfathered on time of use. However, it is grandfathered in the net energy metering or NEM 1 or NEM 2 programs, which I'll get to later, have also since been discontinued at PG&E. So.
I see we've done some inverter upgrades. Do we look at the panels as well with technology changing, useful life and?
We do. So again, the panels have continued to perform. They're over 90% of what they were originally rated at. And again, so we estimate at least another 10 years of useful life. It might extend out beyond that. The replaced inverters that we or the inverters that we replaced at those sites also have estimated between 12, 15-year useful
lifespan.
life. Well, actually, so you can kind of see we got 12 years out of the first one, and we're pushing 16 out of the second one, or out of that second set.
All right, thank you.
We do believe at this time we have recouped all the costs from both the inverter replacement and the initial investment in those fields. So in 2022, we had a total cost savings of $325,000 to the district. And again, we anticipate that's basically a cost savings that the district will continue to accrue each year. Likely, at the end of that, whenever these panels do retire at that facility, we would look at doing probably a complete retrofit of that site. Likely, that would be with better technology or whatnot.
Right.
The panels and inverters continue to evolve pretty rapidly. So,
Okay.
I'll go back real fast. Just to round out that site again, we also have cost savings through our power purchase agreement. That was completed in June of 2021. When we evaluated the cost from 2022, that also came out to be about $354,000. So a total savings at the El Dorado Hill site of just under $680,000 for 2022.
So I have a question. One is, I love the fact that we're doing this, and it's really prudent for our ratepayers to know that we are providing a sustainable way of saving money from their rates. The important thing, the thing I wanted to ask is, didn't we hire somebody to maintain the panels, or does our staff do it? Because I've come to the conclusion, I just upgraded my solar. I had NEM 1 for 8 years, and then I added a bunch more panels. The significance, I get to look on my little cell phone to see what I'm producing and how many, the environmental process of what it's done for my area or my house, what's providing. The question is who maintains those solar panels? And I think we did hire somebody, did we not?
So again, at El Dorado Hills specifically,
Right.
It's 50-50. So the original solar field, the 1 megawatt, we are completely responsible for, we maintain.
Okay.
The power purchase agreements, those are all under a contract. So we
The
don't.
PPA, yeah.
We do not own the PPA facilities. So those are all owned by a third party. They're maintained by a third party.
Okay.
And we pay for power generated. We're under contract to pay for power at a fixed rate for 25 or 30 years from those facilities. So that's the cost savings, is we're paying 7 cents a kilowatt hour at El Dorado Hills versus 20 to 60 cents to PG&E.
Yeah, mine is around 8 cents during during the
Do you
day.
pay for your
For
provider?
my own, yeah.
Right.
And it's been significant, so, you know.
It is.
The
and it
more
can-
panels you add, the better it is.
We'll get to, again, what we expected kind of in our first year and what we're saving here in a little bit. And again, this is a real success story for the district. So, go ahead, next slide.
Director Osborne?
We sell our power now to Pioneer from our hydro plant. Has there been any discussion about converting our usage to Pioneer? Because just based on my personal thing at home, it's about 85% of what PG&E was.
Yeah.
And which is, but for our usage, it would be significant. Has there been any discussion about rotating over to Pioneer in deference to PG&E?
Yes. So again, nuances upon nuances, right? So this takes into, so we are across the board at the district enrolled in Pioneer as well. So the El Dorado Hills and Deer Creek sites, those are both serviced by Pioneer as well. So again, our PG&E bills are kind of in two buckets. One is delivery to the site. Right. That's by PG&E still. The second is just the power itself, and that is now provided by Pioneer. The exception on that, and we'll get to it a little bit later, is our RES-BCT contracts, and that is a program that is specific to PG&E. So those facilities are full PG&E operated, or build at this point.
Thanks.
Yep. I believe Dan's got a question or answer.
I was just going to briefly add, Dan Corcoran, Operations Director. Pioneer actually reached out to the district even before the conversion happened. So we went account by account, as John described. There's a few accounts where we had contractual obligations where those did not exist. It was an engineering, finance, and operations collaborative effort. And so those were all moved over beginning of 2021, I believe, is when we started Pioneer, so late 2020. So they reached out to us, and we've had a very valuable relationship even from the onset. So we've been saving the entire time that we've been eligible to participate in Pioneer. So
Yeah, I think PG&E's had about 40% increase in the last year or so, so whatever we still have with them obviously is expensive, and I don't see any end in sight on their rate increases.
Yeah, similar, so we went back, as I was going back and preparing for this, I think in 2016, our total cost to the district was 4.3 million or somewhere in that range. So again, without the cost savings that we had, it's basically doubled since 2016. Moving on to our other solar site, that's at our Deer Creek wastewater treatment plant. So again, it's a PPA installation. It was all installed at the same time, but it's actually two different fields. The first, Site 1, offsets our usage at our UV facilities. The second, larger site, offsets our aeration and headworks facilities. Yep, next slide, please. So again, we've seen significant savings at this site as well. The UV savings came in at just about $159,000 annually, or for 2022. And for the headworks and blower building or those facilities, 2022 savings were approximately $298,000. So total savings at that site of $456,000 for 2022. Total summary on our solar. Again, solar kind of comes in three buckets. So I'll start off actually going back to when we started off with those PPA analysis, we were anticipating total savings about $390,000 for the two fields at El Dorado, or at Deer Creek, and the second field at El Dorado Hills. Last year, from just the power purchase agreements, we saved $811,000. So again, that's been a real success story for the district. In addition to the PPAs, we had, again, that $325,000 from our initial 1 megawatt solar. And then we also have monetized our renewable energy credits. So technically the district, although we produce power from, or we consume power from the solar facilities, we are not green. We have sold that right under those REC credits. or monetize that. So and we've had some issues there as well, getting those registered and licensed. So in 2022, we also had an additional 59,000 came in from those credits. We anticipate that moving forward, that's going to be closer to about 100,000 annually. So add all those numbers up, we come to just about 1.2 million in savings from our solar installations. Go ahead, next slide.
Mike, did you get that for the newspaper?
So moving on to our battery storage equipment, beginning in 2020, staff engaged with Tesla for multiple sites evaluating the California Public Utility Commission, or CPUC's Self-Generation Incentive Program, or SGIP program, which offered at the time up to $1,000 per kilowatt hour for qualifying installations. Basically, what that has kind of equated to the district is that the batteries and a basic installation at those facilities was completely covered with the program. There were additional costs at a lot of our water facilities for grading and access to plant those batteries. And then at our sewer facilities and at HQ, there's been additional cost to PG&E to upgrade our services to accommodate that. Largely, those costs have been, just at the Deer Creek facility itself, we saved about $2 million in installing new switchgear. It was all incorporated for free in this project. So if we just take that project aside, all of the costs for the battery installations has been covered, probably 2 times. So anyhow, those sites were based on, they had to have at least two PSPS events. They had to be located in a high-threat fire district, and they had to provide service to disadvantaged locations. So we're somewhat limited on where those made sense, and 8 sites or eventually shook out of that list. Go ahead, next slide. So just as a summary, again, there are 8 sites. This is just kind of a overview of what those look like at our at 6 of the sites. We have these power pack assemblies. 2 of the other sites, we have mega packs, which are more like a Connex box setup. All of the sites also included a new main switchgear for the facilities, which is incorporated into the site. Go ahead, next slide. So here in this kind of busy table is a summary. So again, moving list of the 8 sites, we had 5 sites at our 5 water sites, 2 wastewater sites, and again a backup battery at our headquarters building here at the district. In total, the incentives that we received from that program was just over $10.5 million. The estimated 20-year energy savings from those installations comes out to be about $6.5 million. And here's where we get into all the nuances. So year 1, we anticipated, or Tesla's projections for us, where we should realize about $280,000 based on our past usage. To date, in 2022, we've confirmed that we've saved $155,000. There's a lot of asterisks in that table, and so what that is 2 of the sites, our El Dorado Lift and district headquarters buildings, we have not been able to get the bill sorted out with PG&E, so we're still waiting on that data from those 2 sites. And then the Deer Creek, which is going to be one of our largest probably savings, because that's going to offset. So again, that works in conjunction with the solar there. So really, we should be very limited on any peak power purchases at that facility moving forward. Once PG&E gives us a final PTO to operate that facility, which is coming up on a year since it's been completed. And then you'll see some other, so North Canyon and Sportsman, we still have not received a full year of corrected data from those sites as well. So despite that, for the 5 sites that we have data on, we're exceeding revenue. So that's at $25,000 in the bottom corner. So we're expecting to realize probably a little over $300,000 at those 8 sites, $300,000 in cost savings moving forward. Go ahead, next slide. Moving on to additional opportunities. So again, staff is committed to pursuing additional opportunities whenever that makes sense. The first significant development there was the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act in 2022. So up to that point, the federal government was in the process of phasing out renewable tax credits. The Biden administration bumped that back up, bumped the reimbursement on that back up to 30%. And in addition to that, they opened it up to nonprofits and public agencies. Typically, it was reserved to only people that file, or only entities that file a tax return. So now we can claim those credits as well. 3 of our battery facilities were completed in 2022, and this was retroactive to the beginning of 2022. So the district is pursuing additional credits on the Deer Creek wastewater treatment plant, El Dorado lift, and headquarters battery installations. Our initial evaluation of that is about $540,000 in additional credits that will come back to the district. However, IRS is still finalizing the regulations on that, so we'll report back when we get that finalized. It also opened up to a 30%, brought that up to a 30% renewable energy credit on all alternative energy. So moving forward for the next, I think, 10 years or so, as things come up, we can evaluate whether or not additional solar or anything else makes sense. Currently, we think we've kind of milked it for what it's worth, but we'll continue to evaluate that. Again, we previously alluded to NEM 2.0, and it has since been replaced with NBT, net. Let me think. Yeah, anyhow.
NEM 3.0.
Net billing tariff. So NEM is gone. We got yet one more acronym, NBT, that moving forward. Typically under NBT, solar is it's about a third of what the cost savings were under the previous NEM tariffs. So I haven't quite wrapped my head around that, but it's only based on your, again, PG&E's 2 buckets on energy delivery, or the energy delivered, not necessarily their backbone or delivery services. Regardless, so if any NEM 2 applications that were submitted prior to April 15th can receive that grandfathering. So we proactively submitted a NEM 2.0 application for the district headquarters building again, so we can evaluate covered parking structures you see at the high schools locally, see if that makes sense as kind of a last-ditch effort for squeezing some additional solar savings for the district. So again, we'll evaluate that and bring that back to the board if it makes sense. Go ahead, next slide. And then the last opportunity we're looking at is the renewable energy self-generation bill credit, or you can sing it as the RESBCT.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's song.
It's the only way I can remember it. Under that program, you can construct basically up to a 5 megawatt solar facility, and then use the energy that's produced at that facility to offset energy used at other facilities. So again, it's not the full bill credit, which is why this has been kind of a hit and miss. You know, it's not nearly as fiscally viable as the NEM 2 tariffs. This is also the same program that the Res 7 hydro is operating under. So it just offsets the cost of the electricity, not necessarily the cost of delivering it. However, we could use that again at our higher use facilities, El Dorado Hills Water Treatment Plant, the Folsom Lake Intake, and the Silver Valley Pump Station, among others. So, go ahead, next slide. So just in conclusion, electricity costs, again, the reason we're here is because they continue to be one of the largest expenses for the district. Proactive investments in alternative energy projects have provided at least 1.4 million, almost $1.5 million of savings to the district in 2022. And again, we anticipate that cost savings will continue to increase as time goes on. And then staff will continue to monitor and pursue additional fiscally prudent alternative energy and energy savings projects when available. And with that, I'll wrap up and ask for any questions.
Any other questions or comments? No. Excellent presentation. Yes, Director Osborne.
I think in our previous discussions many years ago, we talked about power generation on the flume. Did anything ever come out of that as a potential, putting a turbine on the flume?
I am not aware. That was either before my time or it hasn't really come out. I think in general, it's hard to match up location and feasibility. So anywhere that we located that on our flumes, there'd have to be a nearby PG&E line that we could tie into. And most of our flumes are pretty remote. We kind of already have access issues and along most of that alignment.
Yeah, okay.
I would guess that that didn't pencil out. I think the Res 7 was the most promising hydro generator, and we can kind of see what that site has done to date.
Okay, it's just a question. It seems to me, in my feeble memory, we talked about putting some kind of generation on the flume, even though it's seasonal,
Right.
you know, but thank you.
Yep.
Jim, did you have anything? No? Okay. All right, any further comments or questions? All right, thank you. Any public input in the room or online? Okay, very good. Thank you very much for the presentation. Next, we will go to operations. Mr. Baxter. Good morning.
Good morning, members of the board, members of the public. My name is Jordan Baxter, hydrologist for the district. This morning, wait for Kevin to cue it up, there we go. This morning I'll be presenting an update on our water supply situation. Here we have a photo of Lake Aloha taken last week. And my predecessor in presenting this, Mr. Dan Corcoran, he warned me to be a little bit brief on this because he got a hard time for going long. So I'll try to keep it as short as possible today. Next slide. Lots of snow, lots of runoff. Any questions?
All right, done. Perfect. Attaboy, Dan.
Such an engineer.
But in all reality, anyone who spends a lot of time around me knows I'm not very good on the brevity thing either. So I'd probably have too long of a presentation queued up for you. Next slide, please.
We are the Comic Club this morning.
I thought that was it.
No, it's got a summary now.
All right, so a summary of what we will be talking about today. The statewide drought restrictions have been lifted, as well as curtailment orders and reporting orders. Water supply picture remains wet and abundant, and as evidenced by Jenkinson Lake began spilling January 12th and remains almost all the way full, and all Project 184 reservoirs are scheduled to fill by the end of July. El Nino conditions are present, and models suggest that this is expected to strengthen. And also, we will talk about the recent demand trends and how they align with previous wet years. Next slide. All right, first off, drought regulations. So really two dates to talk about here. The first being March 24th of this year. Governor Newsom lifted the statewide drought restrictions. What this meant for us is this ends the 15% water conservation target that were set. It also removes the requirement for local water agencies' implementation of Level 2 drought contingency plans. Shortly thereafter, on April 3rd, the State Water Resources Control Board rescinded curtailment and reporting orders. So for EID, this means full use of our water rights and also ends the monthly enhanced reporting that staff were completing. All right, so this was updated this morning. This is a very rapidly changing picture, so it'll be different from what was in the packet updated this morning. So as of this morning, Caples Lake, we finished pulse flows on Saturday, and we are rapidly filling that back up, currently at 87%. Silver Lake filled at about 4:30 this morning to 100%, so we're at 100% there. Echo Lake, it is, now that we're warming up again, starting to fill a little bit more rapidly, currently sitting at 77%. And Lake Aloha, you see 50%, quite a bit lower than the rest, but if you look to the left, this was taken last Tuesday from the helicopter right before we landed. Bottom left of the screen, it's probably hard to see, but that's where the dam is, where the open body of water is. The majority of this picture here is actually Lake Aloha. It's just covered in snow and ice still. So still a lot of melt to happen there. So expect that number to come up over the next weeks. Jenkinson Lake, as we discussed, filled on January 12th. In combination of local inflows and then also Camp Creek diversion, we've been able to keep that 100% full and just barely spilling. As of the last week, the inflow from Camp Creek and the local watershed is slightly less than the demand out of Reservoir A, so we are seeing the annual drawdown start to slowly begin. Folsom Reservoir, they have it at 95%. Looks like one last little fill before that annual drawdown begins. And then Weber Reservoir filled New Year's Eve, I think that maybe New Year's Day, and has been full ever since. Just a little recap. Project 184 reservoirs are currently filling. Echo Lake, Silver Lake, Caples Lake, and Lake Aloha are forecasted to be 100% full by the end of July. And then Jenkinson Lake carryover storage, based on where we're at right now, we can expect to see pretty great carryover storage into 2024. So my best guess, based on previous years and what we can expect demand-wise, is that we'll be sitting somewhere around 32,000 acre-feet come December 31st.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Are we prepared for El Nino?
Well, we'll talk about that.
Okay.
I'll just punt that one a little bit further. Okay, so looking at this graphically, we have the last 3 years, so 2021, 2022, and 2023 this year. And then we also have 2 wet years, 2017 and 2019. So we'll start with 2021 and 2022. That's in the blue and purple lines, respectively. You can see that we topped out around between 30,000 and 35,000 acre-feet, and then the drawdown took us deeper south of 25,000 acre-feet. This year's a much different picture, much more aligned with the wet years. And so you see the green trace and then the dashed green line is what we project, being more similar to what we saw in 2017 and 2019 drawdown. Next slide. Okay, so looking at Folsom, there's a lot going on here, so we'll try to take it piece by piece. First year we'll look at is 2017. That's the red line. You can see there was a lot of rain on snow events, high inflows to Folsom, so the Bureau allowed that to fill and then drew back down to their top of conservation level, so you kind of see a lot of noise in that data. 2019, a little bit of that, not quite as much in terms of rain on snow events in the lighter blue trace. And then last year, 2022 in green, just kind of a steady fill. And then this year is a little bit of a combination of the wet years we've seen before, where we did have those January storms. It's really sharp, but the Bureau's really kept that reservoir right at that top of conservation level, and we're looking to have that top off be a month later than typical, similar to 2017 and 2019. All right, so prevailing weather patterns. Overall, a mild spring, and these first few days of summer have been quite mild. I think we can all appreciate that. The Sly Park rain gauge, it's to date 155% of the historic average. We did May snow surveys that put the snowpack at 212% of normal. The Department of Water Resources, because of the large snowpack, asked that we collect data for a June snow survey, so we also did a June snow survey. And it was incredible to see that our numbers, we only really have May to compare it to, but our numbers were north of 100% if you were compared to a normal May. So a lot of snow this year. And then getting to your question about El Nino. So the NOAA, or the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, their latest Climate Prediction Center forecast came out June 8th. That indicated that we were in El Nino, and it's expected to gradually strengthen. So usually what that means is warmer sea surface temperatures, warmer winter, but more precipitation. Doesn't always play out that way, but there is data to suggest that warmer, wetter is likely what our future is looking like for this year.
Isn't El Nino, because of where we're located, kind of in the center of things, it can be hit or miss as to trying to predict how it's going to affect us, because things could go north, things can go south, we don't know.
Very much so. Yeah, so it's definitely a toss-up, and although the models right now are saying warmer, there is a very cold plume that's directly off of like Southern California, and that's led to cooler temperatures across the board for us. So they are calling it for to be strengthened, and I imagine that will kind of turn over to warmer sea surface temperatures. But yeah, warmer, wetter is more likely than not for an El Nino for us. Next slide. So this is just as part of what came out in June 8th. This is the graphic that kind of, for me, tells the story. There's a lot of noise on here. So the x-axis is in 3-month clusters. So where the dots begin is May, June, July, and then it moves forward in time as to what the models predict will happen. Anything below that center dark line at 0 degrees Celsius, that's indicating a sea surface temperature anomaly that's less than normal. So that's typically in the La Nina category. Anything that's above that line is warmer sea surface temperatures, indicating El Nino. So you can see most of the models are showing a stronger, warmer sea surface temperature, which, like we said, is likely wetter, warmer.
Is that indicative of what we call the atmospheric river when the water temperature warms up and we get these intense storms? Does that kind of play into that?
Well, I think 2017, definitely that's how it played out. But then we have a year like last year that had cool sea surface temperatures, and we had a lot of atmospheric rivers. So I'm not a meteorologist, but I think, like Mr. Day said, where we're at, it really can be a toss-up either way. Okay, recent demand trends. So customer demand has really been characteristic of other wet years. So if we look at the last 4 years, so 2020, 21, 22, and then this year, 23, I kind of just looked at January to May, and if you cluster those months together, our demand has been 20% less than the average of those 3 previous years, which seems like a big number, but keep in mind that 2021 April and May demand was historically very high, so that does skew the data a little bit. But just interesting that we are 20% less, but the demand curve is quite similar to other wet years, as we'll see, and very, very similar to the trace of 2011, which had a very cool spring as well. So this is looking at the last 4 years. You can see the red line, which is 2023. That is below 2020, 2021, and 2022 for all months. And so you can kind of get where that 20% less figure comes from. But transitioning to look at wet years, next slide, please. Red trace is on the top in these more recent months, and then kind of middle of the pack in January, February. So the wet years that I compared it to was 2011, 2017, and 2019. And you can see that trace, the red and the yellow are almost mirror images. And it'll be interesting to see how the rest of the summer plays out, if it stays high as it did in 2017, or if we take a little bit of a dip as it did in 2011. I don't expect the 2011. I think it's probably more similar to 2017, 2019. Okay, and last slide here. So in terms of outreach, despite the state lifting the drought orders, staff do remain committed to communicating water use efficiency messaging. This is evidenced by the July and August 2023 waterfront newsletter, which discusses optimal lawn and outside irrigation practices. In addition, regional water efficiency messaging is shared across various channels such as our website, Facebook, and Nextdoor. And I'll leave you with a photo. I think this was taken May 15th, coming down into Echo. Echo Lake had snow and ice on it until the second week of June, which is pretty remarkable for this year. So,
All right, Director Day?
Well, yeah, the most important thing we need to talk about is acorns. So, has Dan brought you up to speed on the annual fall acorn report? That's really critical, and you need to live where there's native oaks. So I just want to make sure.
I've been briefed, and I have 33 is last time I counted oaks on my property.
Excellent, thank you.
Squirrel Index. Director Osborne?
This is a question you probably or may not be able to answer, but on my travels over to the north part of the state, I stopped at Sand Flat where our diversion facility is, and that river is ripping. And is any scientific wild-ass guess how many acre feet are going down that river at it? I mean, at any given time, it is ripping.
2,000 acre feet a day right now.
2,000 acre feet a day. Well, that's a pretty good answer, thank you.
You're welcome. But at our maximum, there was 20,000 acre feet going down.
It was?
During one of the rain on snow events in January, I think it was, we had 10,000 CFS measured over
Just as a guess, how much is the Bureau letting out of Folsom to keep up with that? Are they doing the same 2,000 acre feet or?
Probably more.
Right now, the Bureau is allowing for a really slow increase, and so they're just barely they're releasing less than what's coming in. But then there's some accretive flows below coming from SMUD, and then their neighbors over at PCWA coming down the North and Middle Fork. So they are trying to still raise the elevation of the reservoir.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Right.
Any other questions?
Any other? You sure you don't want to throw a squirrel index in there? It's a little early, but they've been working on them already.
Actually, I have the pine cone index. And we got a ton of them.
All right.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Very good report. Any public input on that? Anybody online, Kevin? No? All right, we're good to go. We have one action item. I'm going to recuse myself on this item. I'm going to turn it over to Vice President Day. What? Paul, did you have a comment? I'm sorry.
Storage increase. I saw a metric that actually shocked me when I found it. On a day when Folsom Lake was increasing storage rapidly, and I went down and drilled down into the detailed data tables and found that it was doing that by retaining only 11% of its inflow.
Gotcha. All right, thank you for that comment. Director Day, it's yours.
All right, we'll move on to item 7, warrant registers. Do I have a motion?
I'll move approval.
A
I'll
motion?
second.
We have a second. Is there any public question or comment on item 7?
I do have a question.
Yes.
In that policy, when I helped negotiate the purchase of Sly Park, I thought that Bureau of Reclamation environmental payment was a 10-year thing. I was informed this morning it's 2013. But what do they do with that? They don't, I don't even have a clue what they do with it. It's $33,000. Now, in a big picture, that's not a whole huge lot of money. But what does the Bureau do for $33,000 for our benefit?
George, they collect acorns for their forecast.
Thank you for the question, Director Osborne. So we're referencing one of our monthly payments to Bureau of Reclamation, and there's actually 2 different components in this month's payment, as there typically are every month. It's for our water delivery fees for sources that we divert at Folsom. This year, we're using local ditch supplies, as well as a remaining obligation for when, in 2003, when Sly Park was transferred for local control. At that time, the district agreed to continue payments as we do for other federal water for a period of approximately 30 years. I believe it's through 2033. Could be 2027, but I'm pretty sure it's 2033. So there was a sunset on that obligation, but that was about a year before I got here, but what I understood, that was part to get the deal done as far as the legislation. So that's actually incorporated into that agreement. What those
Because
funds...
that was part of the negotiations, but I thought it was a 10-year deal, but apparently I was mistaken.
That must have been our proposal, and then obviously things had changed a little bit. But as to what those funds are for, and we pay those funds when we take project water at Folsom as well as every other diverter of federal Central Valley project. So when the Central Valley Project Improvement Act was passed, I believe 1998, circa that time frame, there was habitat restoration fees or habitat restoration fund payments. And those are to make environmental enhancements throughout the CVP, all the way to San Joaquin Valley, all the way up to Shasta, for the effects of the ongoing operation of the project. So it's a component of the delivery fee. It's not significant, but it's not insignificant. It varies between $20 and $30 per acre foot. Still far cheaper than obviously buying water on the open market. But that was an obligation that the district, for a period of time, we will continue to pay for our project water at Folsom.
Other parts of that agreement was that we would not allow dogs to swim in the lake, and that's why in the brochure it says, which makes absolutely no sense because we got ducks that are doing their thing, and we got fish doing their thing, and we've got everybody other critters doing their thing, but dogs can't do their thing in there.
They probably wouldn't do their thing when they're swimming, but anyhow. So, All right, so were there any, I didn't see any, there's no one here, any online, Kevin? No? All right, so we're ready to vote. Are we doing a voice vote? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Nope, motion carries.
And-
Thank you.
And let the record reflect, Director Veerkamp did not vote and recused himself on the item. All right. We have next review of assignments. Make sure you have a look there, nothing too pressing.
Mainly just the ROIs.
Yep, and then we have July 10th, we're not meeting, so. So you got your tentatively scheduled items for future meetings, and with that, we are adjourned. Nice job. Thank you, Kevin.